And welcome into this episode of Time Out with the Guys. I am Brad Burton. He is Carter Foley. Carter, good to be here tonight.
Yeah, good to be here as well, Brad.
It's been a really busy week of sports. Once again here at NBA playoffs. Been really heating up lately. Some teams having to say goodbye finally for the first time. But luckily they will be back very soon, though. Very soon. It's going to be a short off season, as we can all know. Some coaches, some parting ways, some getting hired that we did not expect. I think that's also fair to say. Hard to believe that the first game of NFL is tomorrow night. The Kansas City Chiefs and the Houston Texans. I tell you what, when you've been kind of like locked up, kind of like how we have, and so many other people can probably, understand this too. But it's just like when you don't have a whole lot to do and you are just trying to make the most out of what you can during your downtime. It just doesn't feel like it's here yet, but it is going to be here. I'm still trying to get excited for it. It's just not there yet, but maybe once tomorrow night when it comes, then that's when I'll start to feel the excitement. Of course, on Sunday, when all the rest of the games happen too, that's when I'll feel really excited as well. But overall, though, I think we have a good show tonight, a lot of good topics to discuss. So let's just start off here with probably the big news of the day. It kind of sucks when, after we do a show, big news seems to happen then. We have to wait. That's what I hate about this. Why can't we do a show 5 times a week? No, I'm just kidding. Probably wouldn't work out just yet. But anyway, Steve Nash has been hired by the Brooklyn Nets to be their new head coach. This is a move I don't think any of us expected to see. Yeah. Maybe some close to him thought he was going to be a coach, but for now, I did not see Steve Nash ever being a coach in the NBA. But as we know, he was a consultant with the Golden State Warriors over the past couple seasons with them. So when you look at a guy like Steve Nash, here's a guy who really beat the odds to become such a phenomenal player. Yes, he wasn't the most, you can say, dynamic player out there on the court, but he's a 2-time league MVP, hard to believe. And for a guy who did not average MVP numbers, but still just a very consistent team player, which is what got him those awards. And then his years in Phoenix were phenomenal. Had some good years in Dallas. Went to the Lakers. Just wasn't meant to be there after he suffered all kinds of numerous injuries. When you get older, that just tends to be part of the deal sometimes. But here's a guy who retired then back in 2015, became a consultant for the Golden State Warriors, won a couple more championships there with them as well. So got some rings there as a front office person. And now here he is going to be a head coach in the NBA. I can see where people are thinking maybe here's a guy who does not have any experience. Here's a guy who you think, oh, he got hired because he is a Hall of Fame player. He's a very good, he was a very good team player. So of course he's going to bump in front of all these guys that have probably, you can say, much more coaching experience, much more, just a lot more, I think, things than what he does. So for Steve Nash, though, personally, I love this hire. I really do. I think it's a great hire for Brooklyn, and I know some people have been taking this kind of, I don't want to say personal, but we know Stephen A. Smith, who works for ESPN, great analyst. He's really fun to watch. Him and Max Kellerman there on First Take. But when you hear Stephen A. Smith call this white privilege, I don't know if I would say that's overreaction. I mean, I personally would say it kind of is, because I get it. There's a lot of black men out there that are ready to be NBA coaches. You look at guys like Mark Jackson, who you're thinking, how come he's not a head coach after he was let go by Golden State after the 2013-14 season? But to say, though, that Steve Nash was hired by Brooklyn is white privilege, I just don't know if I totally agree with that or not. Because when you look at what Steve Nash has, done throughout his career, and I think going into being a coach or being a consultant with Golden State was probably the best thing for him. He can understand what it takes to be a coach in this league, learn from Steve Kerr. Steve Kerr, no doubt, is one of the best coaches, active coaches of all time. So I think for Steve Nash to kind of get that inside look at how it's all done, and then also while managing his part-time duties as a consultant, I think that was very key for him, which is why he got this job. And, of course, we know his history there with Kevin Durant and Kyrie Irving. And those two guys were in on him, wanting to be hired. So you have to know that he had a lot of support by the Brooklyn Nets to be the new coach. So I understand we're in challenging times right now here in America where, there's a lot of division going around here, and whites obviously get better treatment, which is not fair at all. But to say, though, that Steve Nash's hiring by Brooklyn is white privilege, do you think that's a bit of a stretch, you think?
I definitely do. Steve Nash, obviously, as you mentioned, he's a really respected individual in the NBA. Obviously, he was a great player, and then he was a consultant for the Warriors, like you mentioned. So I don't really have a problem with the hire at all. Obviously, I could see how people could take it the wrong way, of course. But at the end of the day, it's the Nets organization's decision of what they kind of want to do. And they thought, obviously, that hiring Steve Nash was the best choice for their franchise. And obviously, like kind of like you mentioned too, with Kyrie and KD having pretty close relationships with Steve Nash. Obviously, as we know, the last few seasons when Kyrie was in Boston and also with the Nets that last season, he's been known to kind of stir the pot a little bit, kind of not be so much of a team player. So maybe hopefully Steve Nash as a coach can kind of settle everything down with Kyrie, and he can kind of become more of a friendly guy in the locker room. Obviously, we don't know what's going on in the locker room, but hopefully, those relationships can kind of be healed, and hopefully Steve Nash can be obviously a part of that. But I definitely like the hire. I think it's worth the gamble. Obviously, it's not like Steve Nash just retired from the NBA and that was just jumping into a head coaching position. He's been out of the league for a few years, been the consultant like you mentioned. So I definitely like the hire. I think it's good, and if it doesn't work out, then the Nets can get rid of him. But I definitely think I think it was a little bit of a stretch for Stephen A. Smith to say that, and I think the next day he also kind of mentioned that he also, I think he went a little bit too far as well. So I think it's just one of those situations. Obviously, there's a lot of great African American coaches that hopefully will get shots one day. And obviously, Nate McMillan, who just got let go from the Pacers, I definitely think that he's going to get hired by a team pretty soon as well, whether it be the Bulls or, the 76ers or another team that,
The Thunder, maybe.
The Thunder, possibly. Exactly. So, there's a lot of options out there, and we don't know. Obviously, the season's still going on. It's a really weird year, of course.
Yeah.
So, we'll just have to kind of wait and see. Kind of what every team and GMs are thinking about when it comes to hiring, but I definitely don't mind the hire at all. I think it's worth the risk, and we'll just have to wait and see kind of how it works out once the next season starts out, which is going to be in less than a few months. So.
Yeah, like I said, I'm really excited by this hiring, and for Stephen A. I love Stephen A. I think he's a terrific analyst. He's very knowledgeable, knows his stuff. Of course, he's a fierce debater on ESPN, which makes it even more fun to watch. And I think for him to kind of go back and kind of retrace what he said the previous day after he called it white privilege, we know he's not going to ever just back down from anything. He'll take responsibility when he needs to. And I'm not saying he did anything wrong at all, but he'll try to get to people understand where he's coming from, which I think is very professional by him. So I thought for Stephen A. to do that was also very classy of him. And like I said, I love Stephen A. He's a terrific analyst, knows the stuff. And for the hiring of Steve Nash by Brooklyn, I'm really excited for them. I think they definitely have a really good squad. This year was kind of course, we all know it's been a weird season around the NBA and, of course, in other sports as well. But when they're finally able to kind of get back to their normalcy there, get back to the Barclays Center and play there, it will be really exciting to see how that team does, because they were really competitive last year. They were, even without Kevin Durant. Kyrie was banged up a lot with injuries, and they still put together a very solid team. Yeah, it didn't go the way that they wanted it to, but I'm really excited for this team next season. And I think with Steve Nash kind of fitting the young role as a coach still, yes, he is 46 years old, but I think he's going to fit in well there, help out this young team. And like I said, with Kyrie, he's been known to stir the pot a little bit. So I definitely think Steve Nash can kind of come in there, try to get his mindset right, and help this team get to the next level to where they need to go. So I'm very excited about the hiring of Steve Nash. I never would have thought in my mind he would have been a head coach at all. If you were to ask me, do you think Steve Nash will be a coach, I would have said probably not. I don't see it happening, because when you look at a lot of coaches around the league and stuff, a lot of them, yes, they have played, but they were never really star players in the league. You look at Steve Kerr. He was a bench guy for Chicago, San Antonio, and then look at him now. He is one of the best coaches here, active coaches in the NBA. Greg Popovich, I don't think he ever really played pro basketball at all, but really just coming up through the rankings there. And look at him today. Again, he is also one of the best active coaches in the league. Phil Jackson never really had a big playing career, but look at him now. He is one of the best coaches. So I think for Steve Nash, this could be something new for him. Could Steve Nash be one of the first best coaches that was a star player and also a very good head coach? Who knows? So I'm very excited about the hiring, like I said, but only time will tell to see if this move has worked out or not. If it didn't work out, like you said, probably in a few years from now, they'll look to move on if that's the case. So if Steve Nash turns out to be a really good coach, that's awesome. If not, it is what it is. I'm sure he'll be fine wherever he goes next, whether it be back to a consultant role or maybe as a broadcaster too. Who knows? He's obviously, I think, very talented, or could be talented in that area as well. But overall, I'm just really excited about this move.
Yeah, and obviously, Steve Nash is in a pretty good position too with that Nets team. Being pretty stacked. Obviously, you have Karis LeVert, DeAndre Jordan, all those guys will be coming back. Some of those guys didn't even play, obviously, in the bubble because, of injuries and obviously wanted to protect their family and also protect themselves from, not getting COVID. So, a lot of those guys will be back next year. So, Steve Nash will have a lot to kind of work with, but it's a really good foundation for sure. And there's been a lot of talk with, obviously the Nets being one of those best teams next year and even possibly going to the finals and maybe even winning it. So, he's in a really good position. And, it's going to be fun to watch him coach that kind of that veteran team as well as a lot of young, good players. So, I'm really excited to watch the Nets next year. So, it's going to be a little bit of a tongue twister right there. But really looking forward to watching these guys play next season.
Yeah, absolutely. Definitely going to be exciting for sure. And hopefully the fans are allowed back in. I definitely got to make a trip to Chicago then when the Nets come into town. That's definitely going to be hopefully a priority if that does tend to be the case. So looking forward to that, of Steve Nash being the new coach of the Brooklyn Nets. Very exciting. Like I said several times, I did not expect this move to happen, but it just shows you that sometimes – you just got to be prepared for the unexpected, and certainly that's what happened right here with Steve Nash. So very excited. Can we see how that all works out? And now moving on to another coach who recently parted ways with the Oklahoma City Thunder. That was Billy Donovan. He was in the last year of a 5-year contract. They tried to negotiate a new deal, but at the end they just could not agree, and then they just mutually parted ways. So when you look at a guy like Billy Donovan, here's a guy who came in to be the coach of the Thunder back in 2015, excuse me. And when you look at what the Thunder have been able to do over his tenure, his first year he had Kevin Durant. Kevin Durant came back from a foot injury that he had the previous season. He was terrific that year, led him to the Western Conference Finals, but then they lost to the Golden State Warriors after they were up 3-1. So now that So with Billy Donovan, and you lose that playoff series, Kevin Durant leaves to go to Golden State next season, and then now you're wondering what's going to happen to the Thunder now. Is Westbrook going to be traded? Is he going to leave? Well, Westbrook ends up signing a 3-year contract with them, so therefore you have him there at least for that season and in years beyond. Westbrook ends up winning the MVP the next season with Billy Donovan. And then you can see the Thunder, they just were not able to kind of keep up their playoff momentum as they had previously done there when Kevin Durant was there. And then Westbrook ends up getting traded last year to the Houston Rockets. And now when you look at the Thunder then getting Chris Paul, and then right away Chris Paul, there's rumors about him being traded to Miami right away. Yep. You think that the Thunder was just a quick stop for him, but that was not the case. And they weren't even supposed to be in the playoffs at all. And now you look at the Thunder last year, they started off slow, which was not surprising, but then they just kept getting better and better as the season carried on. So now with Billy Donovan no longer the coach of the Oklahoma City Thunder, it'd be no surprise to see him get another job here shortly, whether it be you look at teams like with Chicago, Philadelphia, the Pacers. So I think no doubt those teams will be in on him. I know that Philadelphia and Chicago have expressed interest in talking to him. So, hey, Chicago, I'm all for it. I mean, hey, he'd be their best coach in quite some time, I would say, if that was to be the case. I think he would be going to a good young squad there. So, but with Billy Donovan, though, all he's been through with Oklahoma City, players coming in and coming out, Kevin Durant, Westbrook, Paul George, he had Chris Paul there in his last year. it really shows you that he can lose a lot of his good players, but still put together a very solid team, especially after what this year they had to go through, losing Westbrook, losing Paul George, and then with COVID interrupting their season because they were on a tear before the season came to a halt. I remember I saw them out in New York City at Madison Square Garden. I mean, of course, the Knicks, they're not a good team, but the Thunder just played lights out completely, and that really just showed you what they could do. So in the end, it just didn't work out for the long run, but I think for Billy Donovan, no doubt, his resume, his numbers speak for himself. No shock, he will get a job here shortly.
Yeah, I definitely agree. Whether it be, obviously, I think it's probably going to be either the Bulls or the 76ers. I know those teams are the teams that have expressed interest. Obviously, like as soon as the negotiations didn't go through, both of those teams were pretty after him like piranhas. So it's going to be interesting to see kind of, who goes after him. And, for your sake, I hope the Bulls get him.
Yeah.
Obviously, and it's a good sight, too, to see, obviously, at the beginning of the season, like we mentioned, the Thunder weren't even supposed to make the playoffs at all. It was like a 0.2% chance of making it. And obviously, look how far they went. They played great during the regular season and almost beat the Rockets in Game 7. Obviously, a little bit of question with the last play in Game 7, but, sometimes those things happen, right? So it's not the end of the world, but still, you have to give credit to Billy Donovan. For coaching that team. Obviously, they had low expectations, and they almost would be facing the Lakers in this second round. So, he's definitely going to get hired, no doubt about that. It's just going to be interesting to see where he ends up. But I do like Billy Donovan going to the Bulls. Kind of a similar situation, having kind of a superstar in Zach LaVine, and then you kind of have some more role players. So, and obviously, what's his name?
Kobe White.
Yeah, Kobe White as well. So, kind of having that good foundation as well. Hopefully Billy Donovan can, create something good, create something special with those guys if he does get hired. But, we'll just have to wait and see. And maybe he gets a job somewhere not even on that radar. So we'll just have to wait and see. But, yeah, definitely he's going to get hired in the next few days, if not weeks. So.
Yeah, I think so too. I think when you look at, and like I said, with his resume, obviously his last 5 years with the Thunder, made it to the playoffs. Yeah, after KD left, it kind of went downhill in some ways, just trying to kind of rebuild that roster back up. And some people were wondering with the Thunder because they got a buttload of draft picks coming in the next few seasons. So they were thinking, why wouldn't you just try to keep them around if you could? I think for the Thunder, they were looking more at this probably from a long-term standpoint. With Billy Donovan, he is 55 years old, but I don't think age really matters at this point. I think for the Thunder, though, they just wanted to go somebody long-term, coaching with a young squad. They might want to bring somebody in just a bit younger, kind of like a Ty Lue sort of coach maybe. Not saying Ty Lue will be going to the Thunder, but somebody kind of around that age range possibly. So, but hey, if Billy Donovan, if he comes to Chicago, I'm all for it. Zach LaVine, who has just been getting better and better each and every season since he came into the league. He had the ACL injury his last year with Minnesota and going into Chicago as well. But I think with Billy Donovan, he could coach up that good young squad. Larry Marketing, I think, still has a lot of potential. Wendell Carter, same deal with him. Kobe White, the rookie who they got last year in the draft, I think he has potential as well. So I think with Billy Donovan, he can definitely lure some good sources to Chicago, good players maybe even. Might be tough at first because with the Bulls, they are still kind of in that rebuilding phase. Finally, not every year. This is a rebuilding year, but hopefully this is where you start to see them just make more and more progress each and every week when the season gets going next year. But if he was to go to a team like the Philadelphia 76ers, he definitely has a good squad there with Joel Embiid, Ben Simmons. I know there's reports about Embiid. Will he return to Philly next year? What's going to happen with that? But I think wherever he goes though, whether it be Chicago, Indiana, Philadelphia, he's definitely got good squads there. Of course, mostly with the Pacers and the Sixers. Yep. Chicago's kind of up there, with their team that they have right now. But I think though for Billy Donovan, like you said, won't be surprising if he gets hired here within the next probably couple of weeks. I would say days. Who knows? We've seen this whole process plays out, pretty quickly. So we'll see what happens with that. But overall, though, I'm excited to see what's going to happen with him. If he doesn't come to Chicago, well, next man up, I guess. That's all I can say. So hopefully the Bulls do whatever they can to try to bring him in. And if they bring him in, I'm not going to say it's going to work out great because who knows how it will work out. I don't know how it's going to work out. So I definitely would hope that the move, if Billy Donovan was to be the next coach of the Chicago Bulls, it would work out. So hopefully things go well with that if that tends to be the case. All right, now moving on to the playoffs. Whoa. Milwaukee, sorry, maybe next year.
Yep.
Giannis, is he going to be back next year or not? They're saying that he will not be traded at all this offseason. But speaking of that, though, let's move on to the game here before we get into those discussions. The Heat just play phenomenal in this series, no doubt about that. Jimmy Butler and this squad, they've really done a great job here since the NBA resumed here in the bubble. So I think with what's going to be happening with them, when you look at a team like the Miami Heat, they've just done such a phenomenal job this season, really bringing in a good squad there. Eric Spoelstra, he's done a great job as their coach. And I think with Miami, no doubt, they are going to be contending there with possibly Boston, who probably will be Toronto here in this game, which I think will happen. So with a team like Miami, are they the best in the East? I don't know. Maybe. Maybe not. It just depends who wins the Eastern Conference Finals. That will determine who's going to be the best. But with with Miami and Milwaukee, no doubt you thought this series could go possibly 6 or 7 games, not 5. And when Miami was up 3-0 in this series, I figured, okay, Milwaukee's gonna be lucky to win 1 game, which they did, Game 4. But then Miami came back and won Game 5, no problem, hands down. So with the team like the Bucks now that entered the season with high expectations, played very good throughout the bubble, but now their season is over. What's next for them? What is going to be next for Milwaukee? Giannis is entering the final year of his contract going into next season. I personally think if Milwaukee does not get a more dynamic player there to play in Milwaukee there with Giannis, I'm not saying they need a big name player, but somebody though to kind of help take the load off Giannis. If they do not get that type of playmaker there, Giannis will have to up his game up even more. So I think for Giannis, the workload could be big for him next year at a much higher level, or possibly not. So I definitely think with a team like Milwaukee, they have to be active in free agency, see what they can get in the draft, because if they cannot work out a deal with Giannis here in this short offseason that will be coming up here shortly, Giannis will definitely be courted by several NBA teams.
Oh, yeah, definitely.
No doubt. So I definitely think for Milwaukee, they have to be on their game this offseason to be prepared for what could possibly happen.
Yeah, I definitely agree. Obviously, we saw them just get outplayed by a really deep Heat team, and obviously I was shocked when it was 3-0. I did not think that the Bucks would be in that position. I thought it'd be a pretty equal series for the most part. Like I mentioned, going 6-7 games, and I was wrong. Obviously, the Heat, like we mentioned in previous shows, have had a really deep bench. Obviously, getting Jay Crowder and Andre Iguodala on the kind of the defensive side, and Jay Crowder's actually been really well. He's done really well, I should say, just from shooting the 3-point basket as well. And Tyler Hero, good rookie. So, definitely surprising. But yeah, you have to give credit to Eric Spoelstra. Obviously, we know what he's capable of. Even when he had superstars, obviously they were expected to win, but now he's kind of rebuilding it. Had a couple of not so much rough years, but just kind of rebuilding years, but still, was making the playoffs. And now they finally have a really good team that's advancing to the Eastern Conference Finals, probably against, the Celtics, but it could possibly be Toronto if Toronto wins tonight. But yeah, that series is also going to be really exciting. But, for the Bucks, kind of going back to that topic, I definitely agree. I think they have to get another player. Obviously, Chris Middleton is one heck of a shooter. There was parts in the game last night where I thought, Chris Middleton was just, didn't have the best of looks and kind of shot him anyway because Giannis wasn't out there. So, definitely hurt, the Bucks. And I knew as soon as Giannis went out with that ankle injury that, they weren't going to win the series. And even when it was 3-0, they're not going to win the series, right? You could have fought hard. They could have got the game 6 or 7, but they probably would not have won the whole series. I think Miami is just too good of a team. They're too well coached. But yeah, I mean, obviously Giannis has already expressed that, he's not going to be leaving Milwaukee, but sometimes things change. If the front office doesn't do anything or they're content with the team that they have, maybe that could obviously change a player's approach to it. So we'll just have to wait and see kind of what happens there with that. But obviously, like you mentioned too, there's a lot of teams that would definitely love to have Giannis on their team, especially surrounded by all their guys. And, it's just going to be interesting to see kind of what happens. And obviously, it's not so much of a free agency as well, either, because this next season is only a few months away because of obviously Corona. So it's going to be interesting to see. But obviously, Heat played really well in this series. Milwaukee only won one game. And obviously in that fourth game, the Heat just weren't really in it. They were, had kind of some turnovers that weren't like them. They weren't really playing great defense in the end. So that was just kind of like a fluke game for them. But then they ended up winning, and obviously in Game 5. So no surprise there that they're going to move on. But I'm definitely looking forward to the next series, whether it be against Toronto or the Celtics.
I think we see that a lot of times when teams are up 3-0, we just start to see them. Okay, they're up 3-0. Here they are going into Game 4. And then all of a sudden, Game 4, like you said, turns out to be a fluke for Miami. And I think for Miami, that was probably the best thing that happened to them. Because you don't want teams to kind of get in over their head. Not that I'm saying that would have happened to them, but you just want them to start kind of thinking about that, saying, hey, we are unstoppable. We'll win every single game. And then all of a sudden, they have some sort of postseason collapse. You don't want that happening. So I think personally, losing Game 4 to Milwaukee, that definitely helped out the Heat. Just kind of, hey, we're not who we think we are. We're not, obviously, hey, we're still got to really earn to win this, because, hey, we've seen a lot of things happen in sports. When teams are down 3-0, 3-1, they come back to pull off the upset. So I definitely think for Miami, they had to make sure that was not going to happen. And for Milwaukee, Giannis being hurt, no doubt that was a huge blow to them. When Giannis was hurt, that was pretty much like, all right, guys, other guys had to step up there in big roles, and that just did not turn out to be the case. They looked lost, like you said, in this series without Giannis. So I definitely think for Giannis going into his final year, of course he says he will be back next year, but here's what I look at too. When you look at a player entering the final year of his contract, you start to think maybe as a team, okay, we had to try to get him locked up to a contract extension. And if we don't, then do we start listening to trade offers? And people would wonder, well, why would you do that? Why would you want to listen to trade offers when you still have him for one more season? You don't want to just try to work out a deal with a guy and nothing is going to get done with the contract. And then all of a sudden, he leaves in free agency to go somewhere else, gets paid millions of dollars. Giannis is no doubt going to crack probably over $200 million. He will definitely do that, like Steph Curry did almost, or he did actually. Giannis will definitely get a lot more money than Steph Curry once he enters free agency. So I think for Milwaukee, and again, I'm not saying this is what's going to happen to them, but I think you have to listen to trade offers, though, if that tends to be the case. I know it sounds crazy, but that's just how it is, I think, in a front office role. Because, yes, we're going to be losing a great player, but if you traded a great player like Giannis, you're going to be getting a great package in return. Look at the Thunder and Paul George. Paul George gets traded to the Clippers. The Clippers send so many draft picks back to the Thunder. So I definitely think for Milwaukee, if that tends to be the case, they may look in that direction. But we'll see what happens with them. If Giannis does leave Miami or Milwaukee, I'll be shocked, to say the least, because I think he's really kind of that face of the franchise right now. He's really starting to emerge as, of course, he is one of the best players here in the league. But no doubt, I think he is the best player, of course, in Bucks history right now. You can almost say that. So I think for Giannis, if he does end up leaving Miami, that will be a shock. Question is, though, where would he go? Hey, I don't know. And of course, like I said, he'll be courted by several teams, but I would not be surprised if that does tend to be the case. All right, moving on now to the next game, the Lakers and the Rockets. So Lakers dropped Game 1 like they did in the previous series with Portland. I don't know if it's a Game 1 curse that they have or whatever the deal is.
The seeds have that problem.
Yeah, they do actually. Good point about that. But anyway, they came back to win Game 2. Huge win for them to tie the series up. And personally, I think for the Lakers this year, LeBron and AD have really been carrying this team throughout the postseason. AD and LeBron, like I just mentioned here, just doing a terrific job. It's really just kind of they've been feeding off each other. Other guys been doing their part as well on the team there as well. And for the Lakers right now, no doubt, Houston, they're a very talented team. Westbrook, James Harden, all those guys down there as well, very talented. So no doubt that this series could go down to the wire possibly. But I think when you look at the Lakers, though, just the momentum that they've been able to have with LeBron and Anthony Davis, those two are just no doubt the best duo right now in the NBA. You can say. I mean, obviously you can make the argument for Harden and Westbrook or so many guys else around the league there as well. But boy, when LeBron starts going off, AD starts going off. When AD starts going off, LeBron starts going off. So I think that's gonna be really key for the Lakers throughout the rest of the postseason, is for those two guys, not saying to carry the team by themselves, but just to keep leading the way. That's gonna be huge for the Lakers, and if that tends not to be the case, then I think the Lakers are going to be in big trouble possibly.
Yeah, obviously, I think they are one of the best duos in the NBA. We've seen it in these playoffs and also during the regular season, just how dominant they truly are. And obviously, something that we didn't really mention either was Rajon Rondo had an incredible game. Obviously, he broke his hand kind of before all the bubble activities started, so he was out, and this is his now second game with the Lakers, and he's had an incredible game. He scored about 19 points, had a couple of assists, a couple of rebounds, and just kind of that veteran leadership and kind of a point guard that the Lakers have kind of been missing. Obviously, Alex Caruso has been there, and then you have Deanna Wade, Jared Smith, but they're not really so much point guards. So it's really good for Rajon to be out there. Obviously, he's not the best shooter, but he can get it done when he has to. But yeah, like you mentioned, those are just AD and LeBron, just a dynamic duo. No one can really stop them. And obviously, the Rockets make it close every time, right? With those last two games, but it's just the kind of Westbrook has kind of been in a funk. Is kind of what I've noticed. He's hasn't shot the ball extremely well in the last few games. Obviously had a better game, scoring 30 points in Game 3, but not so much in Game 2, and had those turnovers like we mentioned last show as well. So I think the Rockets are probably going to tie it up, obviously, in Game 4. I just think that's probably ultimately what's going to happen. But then again, I wouldn't be surprised if the Lakers go up 3-1. I just think, they definitely have the firepower. They have all the momentum as well. LeBron just playing out of his mind, 36 points yesterday, almost a triple-double too, just 5 assists, 7 rebounds as well. So really good performance by LeBron, but when both of those guys are cooking, man, I feel bad for the opponents, no matter who they're playing.
Yeah, it's kind of hard to feel sympathy for the opponents when you're cheering for the Lakers, but I think we can understand how they feel as well. But no doubt, I think for the Lakers and for the Rockets as well, no doubt, like I said, this series will go down to the wire. I personally think, would not be surprised if Houston ties the series back up at 2 apiece. I think that's very well possible. But I think for Westbrook and Harden, they both got to be on their A games as well, especially for Westbrook. I know he kind of goes into this funk sometimes whenever he's been in the playoffs. So I think for Westbrook, he has to be on his A game for sure. And would not be surprised to see him do that. He kind of feeds off on that. People, of course, would say, he would probably say hate, but of course that's not what I mean. I think for Westbrook, he hears the criticism out there by other people there in the league as well, analysts. So I definitely think for Russell Westbrook, he has to be on his game. So would not be surprised to see that happen. But no doubt this has been a very exciting series, to say the least. It's been really fun to see how the NBA has really worked this whole thing out after what happened back in March with COVID, and then you're wondering, will we even see the playoffs even? Will we even get to the NBA Finals, which will be starting up here at the end of this month? So I definitely am very impressed by what they've talked about, or what they've done. I know I've said it before on this show several times. So just overall, it's been very fun to watch. A lot of good teams out there still. It's been really fun starting to see teams that maybe we did not expect. Teams like Miami, and of course later on here we'll get into the Clippers, Nuggets, Raptors, and Celtics, talking about Game 5. So, but overall though, I think for the Lakers and Rockets, it's just been a very fun series so far, and we're only 3 games into it. Yeah. So overall, I just could not be more excited about this whole series. To see the Lakers back in the playoffs has been really fun to watch. Obviously, it's been a very tough year, emotionally for them, what they've had to go through over this past year. But no doubt, though, they are playing with a lot of passion, a lot of heart, a lot of hunger in them. Same with Houston, too. Houston's always been kind of, I think, downplayed a little bit in some ways. Of course, they were expected to be in the NBA Finals. You could say probably the past couple seasons, but that was not the case. They've always kind of been in that last, postseason collapse, you could say, just not pulling it off there at the end. But I think for Houston, like I talked about there with Milwaukee, I think Houston, if they do not advance into the NBA Finals and possibly win it all, they may need to look at free agency to add another playmaker to their team in order to help them get to the next level. So I definitely can see that happening with them. But overall, though, for the Lakers, like I said, I'm very excited for them. LeBron and AD, if they keep doing what they're doing, they will be tough to stop.
Yeah. They've been playing really good. They've had great chemistry this whole season, really, and kind of picked it right back up. Obviously, when they got to the bubble, and they've just been playing really good in the bubble as well. And obviously, they have a pretty good bench as well. Obviously, getting some more shooters and Dion Waiters, J.R. Smith, and then obviously Alex Caruso is a good point guard coming off the bench now for Rondo as well. Obviously, the Lakers still probably miss Avery Bradley for guarding a guy like James Harden on the perimeter, but they've still played really well even without him. But yeah, it's definitely going to be certainly interesting to watch what happens in Game 4. Definitely really looking forward to it. Wouldn't be surprised, like I mentioned, if the Lakers take a 3-1 lead against the Rockets, but also at the same time, I could see the Rockets going on a 3-point shooting spree and just draining so many threes that the Lakers can't contain it. But if that's going to happen, Westbrook has to be lights out, and obviously James Harden has to as well. So it's just going to be interesting, but we'll just have to wait and see.
Yeah, for sure. Definitely going to be exciting to see how this whole rest of the series is going to play out. But yeah, I'm definitely excited to see how it's all going to play out. I think for the Lakers and Rockets, this series will go down to the wire, I think. So we'll see what happens with that. All right, now moving on to our next game here. This was the Raptors and Celtics in Game 5. Right now, Game 6 is currently going on right now with Toronto. Last time I saw, they are winning 81-77. Score obviously has probably changed by now. But with the Raptors, of course, fighting to stay alive here in order to force a Game 7 here after this. I definitely think for Toronto, it's definitely been a season where last year they lost Kawhi after they won the NBA Finals. But now here they are still trying to compete here, still trying to prove, hey, we're still one of the best teams here in the Eastern Conference. Boston, no doubt, is, of course, you can say one of the top 3 teams. Milwaukee, Boston, Toronto, even, of course. But no doubt Toronto in this series has been, you can say, the underdog most of the time. I think for Boston, Jason Tatum, he's just been going off completely. He's just been doing such a phenomenal job. I remember when we first started the show, he had really struggled in the first couple games of the when they got going here in the bubble, and then he's just been on a tear basically since then. And Jason Tatum has really taken matters into his own hands a lot of the times. We saw after Boston when they got Kyrie in that trade for Isaiah Thomas and then Gordon Hayward, and then they drafted Jason Tatum. We thought Kyrie and Gordon Hayward were going to be the 2 leaders of this team.
Yeah. And
Jason Tatum basically just came in right away, and Kyrie was getting hurt, and Tatum just stepped up as a rookie and acted like he'd been playing in this league for nearly almost 5 years, you could say.
Yeah.
So he's done a really good job for them. I've been very impressed by Boston. Brad Stevens, a terrific head coach. I remember when he first came into the league to be Boston's coach, they traded away Kevin Garnett, Paul Pierce to Brooklyn, and then they were going through this kind of rebuilding phase. Rajon Rondo had been hurt with the ACL injury. He came back, but just wasn't the same player. This is why he's kind of bounced around a little bit. I know we talked about him not too long ago, about him in the Lakers. He had a really phenomenal game. He's still a very good player, but not what he once was there with Boston. Yeah. But Brad Stevens, as years kept going on, he was getting better and better as a head coach. Having to learn a new game, you could say, going from college to the pros is definitely a bit of a adjustment, you could say, because you're dealing with more veteran players. You're not dealing with 18, 19, 20, 21-year-olds at oldest 22 years old probably. So, of course, in the NBA, you're dealing with guys that are in their mid-20s to mid-30s, maybe even at upper 30s to say. So I definitely think for Brad Stevens, he's done a really good job as the head coach of the Boston Celtics. I've been very impressed by him. For Toronto, they've done a great job as well this season. Whether their season ends tonight or they don't advance on to the Western or to the Eastern Conference Finals. So I think for Toronto, Nick Nurse, he's done a great job as a coach since he got there before the 2018-19 season. had a really good team, of course, with Kawhi, led them to the championship. And this year, they lose Kawhi, and now you're starting to kind of think, okay, where do they go from here now? Are they going to be a team that's going to maybe look to rebuild in some areas and kind of fall out of the playoff picture, or are they going to keep on competing? And they have competed. That's fair to say. So for Toronto, they've done a terrific job. No doubt if they do lose tonight and their season's over, they will be back hungrier come next season.
Yeah, I definitely agree with pretty much everything you said there. Obviously, I think Brad Stevens and Nick Nurse, obviously, both those guys are incredible head coaches. Obviously, last year was Nick Nurse's first season as a NBA head coach. Obviously, he was kind of shadowing Dwayne Casey all those years and things like that, but also coaching the G League and stuff. So he did have some experience. But yeah, I mean, definitely, what a way to play your first or coach your first season as a head coach, winning a championship. So. Obviously, if they lose, they'll be back. I'm definitely not worried about the Raptors, and they'll probably get a little bit more depth as well, because obviously they might lose Fred VanVleet. There's been a lot of talks about him maybe going and getting a lot more money somewhere else, so they have to replace those kind of players. So it could definitely be an interesting offseason for the Raptors if they lose tonight. But yeah, we have to give the credit to the Boston Celtics. Obviously, their starting five, for this series has been absolutely incredible. And you have to think about it too. I mean, the Celtics were pretty close to sweeping the Raptors. Obviously, OG Anunoby, made that kind of wild 3-point shot with 0.5 seconds left on the clock. To only be down one game rather than down 3-0. So. Yeah. You have to kind of consider that. Otherwise, it could have been over in 4 games. So, obviously, Brad Stevens, heck of a coach. Jaylen Brown, Jason Tatum, those guys have been playing great. And then to kind of get a guy that's kind of very similar to Kyrie and Kemba Walker, obviously a little bit smaller, doesn't play as good as defense, but, still that explosive player on offense, and that he's going to get probably anywhere from 20 to 30 points a night, just by starting for you guys, and also getting 5 to 10 assists as well. So they have really good depth. Not a lot of their bench hasn't done a lot in this series because the starters have just played that well, obviously. So definitely excited to see if Boston does win tonight, them facing the Heat. I think that's going to be an incredible series. I think that could easily go 6 or 7 games. But yeah, I don't even know who would win that series. I think both teams are pretty evenly matched, and I just hope it goes to Game 7, because those are the best type of series, especially to go to the NBA Finals. Man, nothing better than that. So, but yeah, give credit to the Celtics, and the Raptors won a championship last year, and they made it this far as well. So yeah, you got to tip your hats off to both sides, and just a better team in the Celtics will probably win this series, unless obviously there's a miracle in the Raptors coming back, but yeah, no, it's just been a really fun, interesting series.
It certainly has. And speaking of fun series here, our last game before we go to break here, the Clippers and Nuggets. This is Game 3. Game 4 will take place here, starting shortly here at 8 p.m. Central time. But when you look at the series between the Clippers and Nuggets, no doubt you can see that the Clippers so far have the upper hand. Of course, being up in the series 2-1, but. With Denver, we talked about them before, obviously having the really good, postseason so far last week, them playing against the Utah Jazz, really just going off. It's been such a great, series so far. So many players just going off on the boards. And when you look at the Nuggets, when you look at the Clippers, like I said, no doubt they do have the upper hand in this series. But Denver, though, they have competed, though, most of the time. You can say they're not backing down at all. It's just they really have to kind of try to finish it out there as best as they can. And when you look at the series for Denver especially, they've always been kind of, they always do not get a whole lot of recognition lately, I feel like. But lately they've been doing such a great job there. But no doubt for the Clippers, it's just been a season where they're just trying to get back on top. They're in the Western Conference. Obviously, you have a team like the Lakers. They're, of course, their city rival. And like I said, I would not be surprised if this does tend out to be a Clippers-Lakers Western Conference Finals matchup. That would not be shocking to say that. But Denver, they may have something here to pull off here. I would not be surprised about that as well. They may have something to show for. And like I said, for a team like Denver, they're young. They're just getting better and better each and every season. Been playing really tough here in the playoffs. Like I said, for Denver, they may have something to show here. Who knows?
Yeah, I definitely think the Nuggets deserve a lot of credit. Obviously, they were down 3-1 just one series ago against the Utah Jazz, and they came back. And me and you kind of, once it was 3-1 Utah, I'm like, yeah, Utah's gonna put them out. It just wasn't their year. But then they came back and they won, and they're fighting with the Clippers. And personally, I think the Nuggets are going to win tonight. I want the Nuggets to move on and face the Lakers in the Western Conference Finals, but ultimately I do think that the Clippers will be the team that's moving on. I think obviously Kawhi is just playing absolutely incredible. PG's kind of been figuring things out. Obviously he had a little bit of a slump in that series versus Dallas, but he's been playing a lot better against the Nuggets. But it's just going to be, it's only time will tell for the Nuggets. But what I do know is Nikola Jokic obviously has been playing great this whole playoffs.
Oh,
he's been playing so good. And
phenomenal.
He's basically just proven, to me at least, that he is the best center in the league just by how crafty he is. He can shoot the three-point ball incredibly well. It doesn't even touch the net, really. It just goes straight down because that's how high it goes, and it just falls right into the basket. But Jamal Murray definitely has to have a better game. Only had 14 points, 5 of 17 shooting. Obviously, he had those incredible games against Utah where he's scoring 40, 50 points. So he definitely has to have a game like that tonight if the Nuggets want a chance to come back and tie the series 2-2. But I wouldn't be surprised if Kawhi, the Claw, will have an incredible game tonight to kind of take the edge over the Nuggets 3-1. And if that's the case, maybe the Nuggets can come back for another 3-1 upset. But I think it's obviously a little bit more unlikely with a team like the Clippers. I think they're obviously, I'm not saying that the Jazz aren't well coached, but I think Doc Rivers probably would not let that happen under his watch. I think he's just he's been a coach for a very long time in this league, and obviously has a lot of great players as well on the Clippers, and they kind of pride themselves on defense as well with Patrick Beverley, Kawhi, all those guys. So it's going to be interesting to see, but hopefully, obviously, I'm rooting for the Nuggets. Hopefully they can tie it up tonight, and Jokic and Murray have incredible games.
Yeah, like you mentioned, Jamal Murray needs to have a much better game. Like you said, he makes a couple more shots here in this last game. No doubt Denver could possibly have pulled out the win or force in overtime. I think Michael Porter Jr. needs to have a better game as well. 8 out of 17 they're shooting, not bad, but you definitely think about, 8 out of 17 took a lot of shots right there. Only got 8 of them. He would have got maybe 10 or 11 of those shots. We could be talking about a different outcome here of the game. But like you talked about with Jokic, he's just been terrific throughout the playoffs, just been really playing phenomenal. Yeah. As a center, it's kind of odd seeing him shoot, seeing a center shoot for threes. That's pretty odd to see. Joakim Noah can never do that. No. So I definitely think for Jokic to do that, kind of start a new trend here for NBA centers shooting threes, that could definitely be, something we could see more and more. But either way, Denver, they have a really good team here. Being down, this is nothing new for them, like I talked about there with Utah, being down 3-1, coming back to win. Of course, that was a really heartbreaker for the Jazz, but it is what it is now at this point. But for Jamal Murray and Michael Porter Jr., I will say both those guys need to have much better games, which I think they will. Yep. Like you said with Denver, I think they will win tonight. But here in this series, though, I think the Clippers will win it all. But for Denver, though, no doubt, if they do not advance on to the Western Conference or even, of course, the NBA Finals, their season comes to an end here in the playoffs, no doubt they are going to be having a lot of momentum on their side going into next season. So I'm definitely really excited for that. It's going to be really fun. I think, I don't want to look too far ahead already to the offseason. I mean, geez, we're still in the playoffs.
It's right around the corner, too. So.
Yeah, it is. I mean, no, and then when you think about it, the season will be getting back underway here, or starting again, a new season. We can call this the season 2.0 kind of. We can call it that, whatever you want to call it. I know it's just been really crazy so far. Never in my life would I have imagined, okay, here in early September, we have football starting up here tomorrow night, and then we got the playoffs, NBA playoffs happening. We got baseball still going on, which is, of course, normal at this time of year. Yep. But we didn't think, but we were thinking baseball would even happen this year. Yep. I never would have thought I'd be having to watching football, basketball, baseball, all three basically at the same time. Even hockey too. I mean, geez, too many sports I got to concentrate on. But at this point, I think we're all grateful that sports are back basically for the time being. I mean, I am grateful for that. I think we all are. So we'll see what happens with that. But overall, though, I think with the NBA playoffs, it's been a really fun couple playoff matchups here. Lakers, Rockets, Raptors, and Celtics. If Toronto doesn't win tonight, hey, they give it all they had. The Clippers and Nuggets, I think that'll be a really fun game to watch right there. So we'll see what happens with that. But overall, though, I'm very excited to see how this is all going to play out. But until then, we are going to take a break here. When we come back, we'll dive into some NFL talk there. Josh Rosen is on the drive here once again, staying though in Florida, but going to Tampa Bay on their practice squad. Jadeveon Clowney has found himself a new home, finally. Sorry, Carter. Didn't work out, I guess. But
right.
it's okay. You guys will be fine. It's nothing
I had
new.
a feeling it wasn't going to work out. So
Well, it'll be fine. Von Miller, tough break for him. His season may have come to an end early. And some big games we have here tomorrow night. We'll all preview those here when we come back from break. This is Time Out with the Guys. We'll be right back. And welcome back to Time Out with the Guys. If you're now just tuning in, I am Brad Burton. He is Carter Foley. So now moving on to our next topics here. Of course, they're all going to be football related. So hard to believe that the season does start tomorrow night between the Kansas City Chiefs and the Houston Texans. But we'll dive into that here shortly here. But probably the biggest news, well, I don't know if it's probably the biggest news, but some big news happening last week was Josh Rosen. Josh Rosen, here's a guy who's been in the league only since 2018, came up with the Arizona Cardinals, and then last year was traded to Miami, and then he was just cut recently by them, and now here he is signing on with Tampa Bay on their practice squad. So when you look at a guy like Josh Rosen, here's a guy who's been really, it just has not been really fair to him so far, you could say, because for a guy who had so many high expectations coming into the league, because you got to remember that quarterback class was huge. Baker Mayfield, Sam Darnold, Josh Rosen, and then Josh Allen even. And, of course, Lamar Jackson was in that class as well, and he's been the MVP.
Yeah.
So when you look at a guy like Josh Rosen, he's just really gotten the whole brunt of the deal pretty much. He has not been able to get somewhere solid. We thought Arizona at first was going to be the spot for him to be at. He's going to be the franchise quarterback. When he keeps on getting better and better, he is going to be a really fun quarterback to watch. But then, obviously, they go through a whole new entire coaching change again during that season. They bring in Cliff Kingsbury. He's big on Kyler Murray because they get the first pick. And then he says, hey, if I had the first pick, I'd take Kyler Murray. And coincidentally, that was before he was even the coach of the Arizona Cardinals. Yeah. So look what happened. Yep. Basically say, I take Kyler Murray if I had the first pick. Well, what do you know? You end up with the first pick now because you became the coach of the Arizona Cardinals. Josh Rosen then gets traded to Miami, which I'm thinking, okay, that could also be a good spot for him as well. He can be the backup to Ryan Fitzpatrick. He can learn from him because he didn't have that veteran presence there with him down there in Arizona. Yes, he had Sam Bradford, but Bradford though really been dealing with some injuries, hadn't really had that much success as Fitzpatrick's had. Of course, Fitzpatrick hasn't had much of that either, but he's been very consistent though throughout his years in the league as a quarterback. So, but now here you are, Miami. They draft Tua to be their franchise quarterback when that time comes for them. And now Josh Rosen gets cut. Couldn't make it there as a third stringer. And now he goes to Tampa Bay to be on their practice squad, which I think could be a good deal for him. I know, of course, there's a lot of uncertainty for him right now during this time. And when you look at him, he has a record of 3-13 as a starter. That's basically a 16-game season there for him. So I think overall for Josh Rosen, this could work out very well for him because Tom Brady, he is 43 years old. Who knows how much longer he'll play? I mean, we thought by now he would be retired, but that's not the case. Yeah. So I think for Josh Rosen, this could work out well for him in some ways. We'll see what happens with that. He definitely is going to be learning a whole lot from Tom Brady, which I think is going to be a very key thing for him. But, though, to be on your third team in 3 years, and now you're on a practice squad when you were a first-round pick, and really, this is not his fault. This is not his fault at all. Yes, his rookie season, he struggled like all rookies do. Of course, Baker Mayfield had a really good he had a good season in his first year in the league. But for Josh Rosen, he hasn't really gotten that chance yet. Last year, didn't really get to play a whole lot. And when he did play, he struggled at times, but really just could never find his groove because he didn't play a whole lot. So he never got to show what he could do. So I definitely think for Josh Rosen, he needs to take advantage of his opportunity. I get it. It's probably not what he wanted. But at the same time, though, when you have a chance to learn from one of the best, you got to really take stride in that, I would say.
Yeah, and obviously, kind of like you mentioned, he hasn't had the best situations, obviously being drafted by Arizona. And then, they didn't really have a solid team. Like you mentioned, they're going through a coaching change. So, and obviously, as you mentioned too, as him just being a rookie and having those rookie struggles, especially at the quarterback position, was clear. And also, you have to keep in mind too that they were in the NFC West division, which at the time was, still pretty good. Obviously, the Rams, Seahawks were pretty good, and the 49ers were coming up. So, those are 8 games right there that are difficult, to play in. So. And then obviously being traded to Miami, also another situation where not a lot of foundation, not really a winning culture for the last few seasons and things like that. So just kind of tough situations, tough, tough circumstances for him, obviously. But I, like you mentioned, I really think it's going to be good for Josh Rosen, for him to be in Tampa Bay. Obviously, Tom Brady's not what he once was, as we've mentioned many times on the show, but he still has that great QB knowledge, and obviously he's been through the ringer, and he's been a quarterback for many, many years in this league and 6 Super Bowls as well. So obviously that's a great person to learn from no matter what. So I definitely think this is obviously a positive for Josh Rosen. And if somebody does get hurt, like let's say Tom Brady gets hurt, maybe he can be that next man up or anything like that. So just have to wait and see. But to learn from one of the best. In a good system, and obviously, a lot of good offensive weapons too. It could turn around for him and could be good, and he could be the future of the franchise in the next few years. Who knows? So we'll just have to wait and see.
Yeah, he very well could, and that would not be a surprise if that does tend to be the case. Obviously, with him being on the practice squad right now, because you look at the quarterbacks right now for Tampa Bay, they got Tom Brady, Blaine Gabbert, even Ryan Griffin as well. But I definitely think Josh Rosen, has a lot of potential there to go out to see what he can do. And if the opportunity maybe was he's not going to be in Tampa Bay for the long run, he definitely could go somewhere else where this time he does have that knowledge of, hey, I learned from Tom Brady and I learned a whole lot from him. I'm going to apply those skills now to on the field wherever I'm going to be at next. I get it. Probably going to his 4th team, if that was to be the case at all in the future, that would not be what he would probably want. But at the same time, though, I think, he has something in store for him. I think he is going to be a very special player in this league for many years to come still. So overall, I think for Josh Rosen, it's just been a really tough break for him so far. He has not gotten the fair opportunities. You look at Baker Mayfield, Sam Darnold, Josh Allen, Lamar Jackson, all those guys in that class. They've gone on to do great things. Obviously, Jackson winning the MVP last year. Baker Mayfield, of course, last year he had some struggles as well, but looking to rebound big this year. Sam Darnold, it just hasn't really been what he was in college, but still, I think this year is going to be a make or break year for him and for Josh Allen. Last year, leading the Bills to the playoffs, looking to rebound or looking to keep on building on that, on what they had going last season for them as well. So, I definitely think for Josh Rosen, is there some bitterness towards those guys right now? I don't know. Maybe. I'm not going to speak for him, but when you were a high draft pick and when you say that those teams in front of you made a mistake in not picking you, well, look where you're at now. So I definitely think for Josh Rosen, he's gotten the brunt of the deal and stuff. Just in Arizona, didn't work out when Cliff Kingsbury came in. And in Miami, basically it was tank for Tua. Well, worked out pretty well for you because Tua got hurt and fell into the Dolphins' hands. So I think for Josh Rosen, he just has to stay positive, keep a clear mindset, knowing that things will work out eventually for him. And hopefully once he does get his shot to go out there and play and start winning football games, he's going to be playing at a level we never thought we could see him before, because he is learning from Tom Brady, who is no doubt the GOAT. So we'll see what happens with that. I'm definitely looking forward to seeing how that's all going to work out. But now moving on to our next topic here, Jadeveon Clowney. He is finally off the free market. He is signed on with the Tennessee Titans. No doubt, I think this move kind of surprised me, but when you look at the whole move, it reunites him there with Mike Vrabel, who was his position coach and the defensive coordinator for the Texans back when Clowney played there. So I think for Clowney, this move, he looked at it as I had some really good years there with Houston when he was there as my defensive coordinator and the position coach. Obviously, last year with Seattle, he did a really solid job for them as well. I know for you, I know you were hoping that he would come back, but no doubt I think Seattle still has a really solid defense. No doubt. They could lose. They seemed like guys come in and go, and they still put together a very solid squad there on defense. But I think for Clowney, though, just really surprisingly how long he was on the free agent list. You really thought that right away he was going to be signed or at least maybe taken in by some team quickly once the new league year had gotten going, but that was not the case. Obviously with COVID, we know it's been kind of playing things. It's been changing a lot of things lately, so that could possibly played a role there as well, making sure he was going to be safe, making sure he wasn't going to get sick, all that stuff. So definitely a move. I think for Tennessee, that's huge for them because you look at them last year, they were a really solid team going into the playoffs, beat Tom Brady and the Patriots. They had a lot of momentum there on their side. And I think just for Clowney, if this could move turned out to be really good for him. It's a move we did not expect to see happening, but overall, I think for him, this move, like I mentioned, he's reunited with the coach that he knows very well. They worked very well together. So overall, this move, I think, is going to be the best thing for him.
Yeah, and as much as it pains me to say it as well, it's a good situation for him. Obviously, the Titans were one game away from going to the Super Bowl last year, and they weren't really projected to do that at all. Obviously, they have a really good offense for the most part. Ryan Tannehill has been playing really good, and obviously they have a really good running game in Derrick Henry, and obviously they got a lot of those guys long term now. So really good foundation, and obviously for the defense, they've had a pretty good defense too. But to add a guy like him, just for 1 year, it's worth a gamble for sure. And the Titans are definitely letting everybody know that they're going to be chasing a Super Bowl this season, and getting a guy like that definitely proves it. And obviously, kind of like you mentioned too, for the Seahawks, it definitely does suck, especially as me being a Seahawks fan. We couldn't sign him, but like you mentioned, they have a pretty solid defense for the most part, really good offense as well. Obviously, we got Jamal Adams and all that, so I think it's going to be. Oh, come on, hey, come on. He's good. He's going to be good.
Khalil Mack.
No, but
Trubisky.
Yeah. He's probably going to pick him off. No, okay.
Probably.
I would love the Bears just to make the playoffs, just so the Seahawks could play the Bears. I would love that. That would be. We would have to do a special episode of that. Just us talking about the matchup. I think we would have to do that. But getting back on track, obviously the thing that kind of worries me a little bit as for Jadeveon leaving the Seahawks is that the defensive line is going to struggle because of it. He was one of their obviously best players to rush the quarterback. Obviously he didn't get a lot of sacks last year, only 3.5, but it's the things that he did that really kind of went unnoticed too, that for the most part is what Seattle is really going to ultimately miss. But like I said, I think it's, I knew that, after the last few months, it was probably unlikely that he was going to return to Seattle, unfortunately. So it was one of those things. And, he was after the money. I mean, obviously the Browns were offering him, 1, 2, 3 year deals for, $17 million, but he wanted to go to a winning culture, ended up not taking their offers. And decided Tennessee was the best fit. And, the best part about it too is if he has a really good season, he can sign a bigger deal somewhere else too, or maybe the Titans will give him an extension worth even more. So, good for him. Definitely sucks that he's not going to be coming back to Seattle, but I can definitely understand kind of where he's coming from.
Yeah, absolutely. And I know for a lot of teams, especially for Seattle, we know Cleveland was a team like you mentioned that was up there and trying to get him. Just didn't work out for them. But I think going to Tennessee. For a team like you mentioned, that was just one win away from going to the Super Bowl. Hard to believe, man. If they would have gone, that would have been crazy. But no doubt, Kansas City though was just the better team all around, of course. And I think for Clowney getting this 1 year contract, it makes sense, especially at this time of year when we're almost about to start the season here, which is happening tomorrow night. You just want to see how he's going to do. He's taking a lot of time off, of course, because COVID's made things a lot more challenging for all these players and teams. So I think for 1 year, it's just, hey, go out, see what you can do, and if you actually turn out to do really good, maybe sometime during the season, they can offer him a contract extension. I know this is a whole different kind of comparison, but when Alshon Jeffrey signed on with the Philadelphia Eagles for 1 year back in 2017, back before that season had ended, they signed him to a 4-year contract extension. So that could possibly be in the works for Clowney if that tends out to be the case. So don't rule anything out just yet. If he does hit the market though again next spring, I definitely think he will be recruited much more quickly and signed quickly too.
Yeah.
Even, but who knows how that's all going to play out. But definitely they're going to be interested to see how this is all going to work out. He's definitely, I think, got a lot of things going for him, and I think for Tennessee, they got some good stuff there as well. Ryan Tannehill, I know this is offense now, but Ryan Tannehill, Derrick Henry, those guys did a really good job last year for them. So I'm definitely excited to see how this Titans team is going to do. So definitely looking forward to seeing how that squad is going to do down there in Nashville. That division we all know is going to be kind of maybe challenging in some ways. Phil Rivers going to the Colts. You got Tennessee there, Houston even. We'll see what they can do. I know this offseason, for them, it's been really not what they want for them. Trading away, you can say the best wide receiver in the league, if not one of the best. And then Jacksonville just seems to want to trade all their players now.
Yeah,
so
they're definitely on the rebuilding side of things.
They definitely are. I think they want to get Gardner Minshew, a really good squad there around him when that time comes around. But yeah, we'll see what happens with that. But yeah, I think for Tennessee, they definitely have something good going there for them. So definitely excited. Like I said, this could work out really well for them, I think, for signing Clowney. And if it doesn't work out, I mean, hey, it's just a 1-year contract. That's all it is. Yep. I get it. He's getting paid a good amount of money for 1 year. But I think this is how it's just been going now these days. The market's just been huge now for these guys. So for 1 year, these guys will be getting paid a lot of money. But in the end, like I mentioned, it's just 1 year. So again, see how that all is going to work out. But overall, though, I'm really excited now. He's off the market finally. I know it's been a process for him as well. So we'll see how that's all going to work out. Now, moving on to some tough news here for the Denver Broncos. Von Miller, he is going to be out for the season, most likely, it appears to be. That's what Coach Vic Fangio is saying. But it appears, though, that is more trending towards that. So yesterday he suffered what's been called a freak injury to his lower ankle, or to his lower leg, now being described as an ankle injury. We'll be having a surgery on it. So I think when you look at Von Miller, here's a guy who's been in the league since 2011, just been a very dynamic player for the Denver Broncos. This is a player who is very special in many ways. Ever since he came into the league, he's just been tearing it up day in and day out. Back in 2013, he kind of had the legal issues, and then he came back. He tore his ACL, but then since then, 2014, he has just been on basically cloud nine, pretty much. Yep. Off the charts, got himself a championship there in Peyton Manning's last year in 2015, and he's really just been tearing it up. And for a team like Denver this season, they're looking to make big strides this year. I know when you're in the division with Kansas City, that's gonna be pretty tough to make, but you're still looking to make strides this year, not give up, try to compete as much as you can. But now with Von Miller going to possibly be out for the entire season, this is a huge blow to this Denver defense, because you got to think they were looking to make big strides, like I mentioned this year. You have a head coach in Vic Fangio, who's a terrific defensive-minded coach. He had great years in San Francisco, great years in Chicago. Even last year, starting to see that defense kind of make some strides. Obviously, Bradley Chubb, though, getting hurt last year, tearing his ACL there in the 4th game of the season. So I definitely think for Denver, like I said, this is a huge blow for them, especially for a season that they look to make some strides. But now, what they say, it's next man up. I think for Denver, this will be a good opportunity for the next guy who will be taking for Von Miller. In the meantime, will step up and do the best job that he possibly can. But like I said, for Von Miller and for the Broncos, this is a huge blow for them, no doubt. And if he's going to miss the entire season, that might be best for him. But overall, though, I think for Denver, they just got to get their next man in there and just try and do the best job that they possibly can.
Yeah, it absolutely, definitely sucks for the Broncos. They're definitely going to miss him, and obviously it is unfortunate too. Just right before the season starts, an injury like this happens. So obviously they are going to miss his presence out there on defense, and but yeah, like you mentioned too, it's that next man up mentality. And even if the surgery is successful and everything, and obviously he is going to be out for the season, hopefully he can still be around. To kind of mentor those guys, those younger guys, and those inexperienced guys as well. Give them some advice. So hopefully he can still be that kind of like that player / coach on the defensive side of things, especially for those linemen. So it's definitely a blow for the Broncos though. But hopefully they can figure things out. But yeah, I mean, it's just kind of a rebuilding year for them at the same time. So. Definitely gonna miss him, but hopefully they'll bounce back, and hopefully the offense too can be a little bit better. Obviously, they're still kind of trying to figure things out on the offensive side of things as well, with Drew Lock kind of being the man in charge for them. So hopefully, maybe where one side is a little bit weaker, maybe the other side can pick up a little bit more of the slack. That's kind of how it works sometimes in football, and just got to hope for a speedy recovery too, and obviously hopefully the surgery goes well.
Yeah, definitely, for sure. I think the surgery is going to be the big part of this recovery for him. Will it be successful or not? Definitely turns out always they will be successful, so that would not be a surprise there. And I think for a guy like Von Miller, now he is 31 years old. We cannot forget about that, his age too. So he's getting up there in age. But I think for him, for the guy that has a really good work ethic, no doubt he is going to come back and bounce back very hard as much as he can and come back and just be still a really good, phenomenal player here for Denver. And I get it. It's just a huge blow for them this year. But overall, though, I think they just got to try and get through this season. Still try and look to make big strides this year, obviously with Drew Lock now being the starting quarterback this year for them. I definitely think they just got to try and rally around this team as much as they can in order to get to that next level, despite Von Miller on defense being pretty much out for the season, you can say, at this point. So either way, it's a tough break for him. You just hate to see it, especially just days before the season gets going. That's just a huge blow for them. If it happens in training camp, it's just like, oh, man, it's still a blow, no doubt. But then at least you get time for some guys to step in, see what they can do. That way you can get more confident going into the week 1 opener. Not that I'm saying that they are not confident, but you still want to feel that somewhat comfort level of not just having, okay, the guys have to step up right away and do the best job that they possibly can. Because we know now that there will be struggles there in that linebacker spot that Von Miller, that he had. So I think for Denver, they just got to do the best job that they possibly can on defense there. Try and step up their game as much as they can, and we'll see what happens with that. But overall, it's just been a very crazy offseason with all what's been going on here. Players going to different teams, especially players that have been with teams for, you can say, probably 150 years, like Tom Brady was with the Patriots. Yep. But now here we are. Week 1 starts tomorrow night between the defending Super Bowl champion Kansas City Chiefs and a team that likes to make really bad deals with Bill O'Brien, the Houston Texans. So who you got tomorrow night, the Chiefs and Texans? Well, pretty obvious pick right here. I think we can both agree on. Yep. I'll take the Chiefs in this one. Final score for me, I'll give that 31-17 for Houston. For Deshaun Watson, by the way, signed a big contract there, 4 years, $160 million, I believe. Kind of shockingly, because I think we thought that he would want out of Houston, but I think the money, though, they say, hey, money talks. Well, look, it does talk, of course. I mean, they still got a good squad there, kind of. I mean, Will Fuller needs to stay healthy. Brandon Cooks, same for him, needs to stay healthy as well. David Johnson, can he get back to his 2015 and 16 form? We'll see what happens with that. But DeAndre Hopkins, that's just a huge void right there in your receiving core. That's a huge void for him. Kansas City, Mahomes, he gunslings the football to Tyreek Hill. Game's over like that. It's just how it is. Yep. The only way you'll beat the Chiefs and Patrick Mahomes is if you outscore them. That's how you'll beat them. It doesn't matter. You can have a dominant defense. You can have a terrific offense. The only way you will beat Patrick Mahomes and the Chiefs is if you outscore them. For Houston, I don't think they're going to do that tomorrow night. Chiefs win.
Yeah, and I also have the Chiefs winning this game tomorrow. I think obviously they have a little bit of momentum carrying over from winning the Super Bowl. Obviously, they know that they're the big dogs that everybody's going to be trying to go after this season. But obviously, Patrick Mahomes, Andy Reid, all those guys, even Travis Kelce getting big contract extensions for the long haul. So those guys are happy they got paid now. But yeah, I definitely have the Chiefs winning tomorrow. I got them winning 28-21. I think obviously Deshaun Watson still being in Houston gives them a fighting chance. Obviously, we've seen in certain situations too, if you have a really good quarterback, some of those guys that you've never heard of before, they step up and they all of a sudden become stars. We kind of have seen it in Seattle with Russell Wilson. Obviously, during their rebuilding years, Russell was still there and he was kind of keeping that team alive. So I definitely think the Houston Texans can do the same. Obviously, a little bit of question though with the DeAndre Hopkins trade, a little bit surprising, and it definitely made them worse as a team, and ultimately losing your best wide receiver and really not getting anything in return for it. So, it's unfortunate for the Texans, but I think with Deshaun Watson, it does give them a fighting chance. So, I definitely think it's going to be a close one, but I'm giving the edge to the Chiefs tomorrow night.
All right, and now with our last matchup, we have your question that we'll preview some more games here shortly with the Seahawks and the Bears. With the Buccaneers and Saints, Tom Brady's debut with Tampa Bay, and fun fact, I'm sure many people know, 2 quarterbacks over the age of 40 will be starting here in this game. So for the Buccaneers and Saints, this is definitely going to be a really fun matchup to watch. Definitely looking forward to seeing this game. I'll take the Saints in this game. I think for Tom Brady, it's his Week 1 debut with with Tampa Bay. I know, of course, people probably might be upset with that, but I think for Drew Brees, he's so much more familiar here in this division with Tampa Bay. But no doubt, I think Tom Brady definitely will take a lot of, he'll definitely learn a lot in this matchup and stuff. It's a new team, a lot of new players here as well. Gronk came out of retirement. So I think for Tampa Bay, they could experience maybe some slight growing pains in some way. But overall, I think this will be a great matchup. But in the end, I'll take the Saints winning this game.
I also have the Saints winning this game. I think, obviously, kind of like you mentioned, Drew Brees has been around these guys for a lot longer. It's a new experience for Tom Brady and a lot of those offensive pieces as well. Obviously, the Buccaneers still have a pretty good, solid defense that have mostly stayed the same, and not a lot of those guys have been traded or have left this season. So, but I definitely give the edge to the Saints. I just think, obviously, they've been around. They played more seasons together, especially on the offensive side of things when it comes to Drew Brees. And also, you have to think and keep in mind, too, that Mike Evans is a game-time decision for the Buccaneers, obviously, with that hamstring injury. So, who knows how long he'll be out for. He could possibly play, but if he does play, he might not even be 100%. He might only be 70 or 80%. So, especially going after a tough team like the Saints, you have to have all your guys ready to go. So, but yeah, I definitely give the Saints the edge. I got them winning 21, and I got the Buccaneers scoring 17. So, it's going to be a close one, I think. But yeah, I give the edge to the Saints.
Yeah, definitely, for sure. Oh yeah. I didn't give a score prediction for that game as well. I'll go Saints 27, Buccaneers 24. I'll go with that prediction. So now, of course, moving on to my favorite team, the Chicago Bears, the Bears. Week 1 matchup with Detroit. I think the Bears kind of got lucky with this matchup, I would say. Playing kind of against a team that's really been banged up with the injury so far over the past couple seasons there with Matthew Stafford. Personally, I think the Bears will win this game in Week 1. Fun fact, if the Bears do win their Week 1 matchup, it'll be their first Week 1 victory since 2013.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, I know. Should have ended in 2018, but Green Bay and Aaron Rodgers is banged up knee decided to make things a little different for that one. And then last year, Matt Nagy, that's what you get for not playing your guys in preseason last year when you only score 3 points. Kind of saw me hesitate there for a second because I was getting a little angry. But that's in the past now. You should try and move on. But, Mitch is the guy. You hope for the best. But if not, you got Nick Foles. Yeah. So I know with Seattle, you're looking forward to that matchup there with Atlanta. So,
yep. Yeah, it should be obviously an interesting game. I think obviously Atlanta has a really good offense.
They do. Yeah.
Their team struggled last year. Their defense kind of gave up a lot of points. So it's going to be interesting to see. Obviously the new Seattle offense, obviously keeping a lot of those guys, but also adding some new additions in Greg Olsen, as well as also getting back a couple other wide receivers as well, and having some guys on practice squads as well. So it's going to be interesting to see. Obviously, on the defensive side of things, they have a pretty good defense now. Obviously, having Jamal Adams, Quandre Diggs, a couple other pieces as well. The only thing I kind of worry about too, kind of looking at that game, is obviously the offensive and defensive lines for the Seattle Seahawks. It's kind of the weakest area for the team, but it's going to be an interesting test against the team that obviously the Falcons. I think they're definitely going to have a better season than they did last season for sure. But I give the Seahawks winning this game 28-14. It's in Atlanta, but I still think I think the Seahawks are going to get it done. I think Russell's going to have an amazing game. It's just going to be interesting to see, and most importantly, I'm just excited for football to be back.
Yeah, I'm excited too. And Greg Olsen, every time I hear the name Greg Olsen, my heart just breaks. it breaks. He was with the Bears early on in his career, and then Jerry Angelo just traded him to Carolina, and he did a great job there. And now he's going to do a really dominant team there with Seattle, fighting for his first championship, which I would not be shocked if he gets it. But yeah, it just every time I hear Greg Olsen, I just want to cry. Because that's what I did when he got traded. Basically, I was just like, why would they do this? I was just trying to destroy their team, but whatever. It's in the past now. Last game I have here between the Dallas Cowboys and who are they playing?
The Rams.
Yes, Cowboys and Rams. Cowboys lose 50-0.
14-0. Okay, I think both teams are gonna have mediocre seasons. Obviously, as we talked about during our predictions a couple weeks ago, I think they're both gonna have mediocre seasons. I think it's gonna be a close game. I'm gonna say, I don't know, 14-10. I think it's gonna be low scoring. I'm gonna give it to the Rams though. I think the Rams are gonna ultimately win this game against the Cowboys. I think the Cowboys are just gonna do Cowboy things and lose the game. So.
Yeah. Okay. I'll give a new score prediction since my score prediction was just out of sarcastic. 49-0.
Okay. Yeah, that's a little bit more realistic.
Yeah, that is more realistic. Okay. If I had to give a really honest score prediction, I'll go 21-14. I'll go with that. So yeah, Cowboys will do Cowboy things. Jerry does what he wants. He had a pretty nice yacht during the draft. So.
Oh.
Yeah, that did look pretty nice. I was kind of jealous about that, but hey, when you have millions, you can do whatever you want pretty much. But anyway, though, I'm definitely looking forward to the games tomorrow night, or just one game really tomorrow night, and then on Sunday that will be the big games, and then Monday Night Football, you got 2 games there, so that will be fun to watch there as well. Until then, this has been Time Out with the Guys. Enjoy all the sporting events happening here, NBA, MLB, NFL, and hey, if you like hockey, there you go.
Nope.
Anyway, thank you for tuning to Time Out with the Guys. I am Brad Burton. He is Carter Foley. We'll be back here next Tuesday, hopefully, here at 7 p.m. We'll keep you updated if anything happens. But until then, take care.